Hey everyone, my name is Franci and welcome to the Goodish Show. Today I'm hosting Elvis. Elvis is an entrepreneur and a product designer. He used to work in a podcast Picorate, then he was freelancing for some time, and today he's CEO of Programination. Hi Elvis.
Hi everyone, my name's Elvis. Yeah, thanks for the intro there, Francie. So a little bit about myself. I went to Babson for entrepreneurial school and really wanted to start my own startup. Like I said, the first one I joined after graduating was Picorate. Picorate was this kind of crowdsourced search engine platform where people can kind of grab together information they find online that's very useful and work on these kind of search queries together and share with each other these useful nuggets of information that they find online. And so I did that for a few years. In America, eventually my co-founder moved over to Korea to try to build it out there. And then after that, I happened during that time was in Accelerator where I met my other co-founder, Edison, where currently we are building this startup, which is a design and development company for making websites and mobile apps called Programination. So that's how I met you, Francie.
So this first startup, the Picorate, it's still operating?
It's still operating. He's still trying to build it. It's right now. There's just a Korean version of it, so it might be a little hard for you to navigate if you don't really speak Korean. But the plan, I still keep in contact with him. The plan is to eventually release a U.S. version or international version. But it's still kind of in the beginning phases to try to work out, what is the product market fit for Picker.
Okay. And so your role mainly during your career was like a product designer?
It's been it's been a mix. I mean, before doing my MBA at Babson, I did a lot of teaching, and I studied as a city planner architecture. Did a bunch of different things, was in film, but had a lot of experience in design as well, obviously as an architecture and city planner. But at Picorate, as for many startups, I'm sure people out there listening, um, you wear multiple hats. My official role was the CMO, the marketing guy, but obviously I was in charge of the product as well, talking to potential users, trying to get feedback to figure out what needs to be built, what's the value of them, and then communicating that with the development team, as well as trying to market the product and try to get users on board. These days, I am more of the COO of Programination, but again, wearing multiple hats, small startup, doing everything from business development, talking to clients, talking to developers, and trying to figure out exactly, what needs to be built, managing that project, and just making sure we get across the finish line with a successful product to our clients.
Okay, so I find when I was discussing with you, it was interesting to me because on the first look, it looks like you have two different roles. One is more
Mm-hmm.
business oriented, so you are like developing a business and all those
Correct.
business questions around metrics and strategies and so on. And the
Mm-hmm.
other is like designing a product. And
Correct.
I would please explain a little bit how those two areas are connected and why they are connected.
Uh, I mean, it depends. So, at least with my current company, I myself, am trying to grow the company, and so obviously I am thinking in terms of long-term strategy, strategizing. How does a design and development company grow, and not just maybe getting more clients, but what are some smart ways to grow? But in addition, with a small team, sometimes I also jump in and do design for our products for Programmation, but also for our clients as well, right? But the other thing that I kind of take pride in with our clients is that when we work with our clients, I try to assume the role as I am part of that company as well, right? It's not like they hired me as a separate contractor to work on this thing. I was hired into the company to try to think about what to do best for the company. So even though they might hire us just for design and development, I still try to think for these clients of ours, what is the product roadmap or what's the strategy, what should be done, and make suggestions there. A lot of times, I would say, a lot of first-time entrepreneurs have very big visions of what they want to build, um, but lacking a lot of resources. So a lot of times, it's really trying to think about how do we scale the product down to like an MVP, that we can put out there into the market to generate some initial value, generate some excitement, so that once we get some of the initial customers and some money and whatnot and investors, then you can start building to that longer vision you have. And so a lot of times entrepreneurs do have, they're stuck in the like, I want everything at once, and it's not that easy, right? It takes a lot of time and effort to get there. And so a lot of times on our side, as we're designing or developing, we try to figure out what is that important piece first and build that. So that's where the strategy part and design development kind of comes along, because we don't want to necessarily, I think, same with you, we don't want to do anything that someone tells us without thinking through what is the most successful way of accomplishing it.
Yeah, and I also think a lot of times at the beginning, people think too much inside of the boxes, and it's like one box for the design and one box for the marketing and one box for product development and so on. But in reality, all of these boxes should be tied together and work together. And actually, the design starts with the business plan, and also the business plan in a way starts with the design. So it's different, but it's also the same thing.
Yeah, that's why I would say right now as a smaller company, we have our, myself and the other team, we have our hands on every part of the company, right? It's not like we segregate the designers from each other, developers from each other, the marketing and the strategy from each other. Like you said, I think when you know all the pieces going in, that's when you have ideas that can integrate with each other and have some synergies to work well with each other, right? You can, for example, you have a business idea and you have a specific target niche that you want to go after for this product, but you have to think about in marketing, how is that going to incorporate with each other, but also maybe in development, how can you add in those analytics pieces? How do you point a certain demographic of people, or based on what they've been clicking on Google or ad, making sure they go to the right place. And that's, you have to do that within development as well, within design. What is more visually appealing to them, what would capture the eye to click on. And unfortunately, not everyone is the same, right? Maybe the product has the value of the product is can work across many different types of people, but they each are compelled to are interested in different kind of wordings and graphics and whatnot. So it is important to kind of understand holistically, what is your product doing, and understand your users, and then, design, develop, and market and strategize with everything in place. I agree with you.
And how do you bring all these pieces together? So what's your process? How do you start a new project?
For at least for our clients, I think one of the first things we really want to understand is, what is the problem, right? Instead of, a lot of times people are just really interested. I want this. I want something that has a map that shows this. I want to show these data analytics. I want to, grab this information from the user. Those are all like features and whatnot. But the very first thing usually that takes the most time is really trying to figure out what is the problem that you're trying to solve, and is that even the right problem? Sometimes there's a problem that's deeper within that for that user. So taking the time to really figure out what is the problem there, and then what are the, if it's a problem, what are the users currently doing to solve that problem, right? Are probably other competitors out there. There's probably substitutes that help them alleviate that. And so are we able to solve that problem in a way that's either 10 times better for them to, convert over, or what are we doing that would benefit someone to be like, okay, well, I already have, it's hard for someone to change what they normally do. So what can we do to provide enough value where it's like, actually, I'm going to leave my current, the current company I'm using or the current solution I'm using for this better one, right? So I think a lot of times there is a lot of effort to understand, research, talk to potential users about that problem, and then brainstorming those solutions. And then I would say, kind of more of a lean approach is then design it on an MVP style, right? What is not building everything at once, but kind of what is the minimal viable but also valuable product that can be created with the least amount of resources to start testing. And usually for that, it's creating the designs, showing those designs to potential users, getting feedback, see how they feel about it, do they see value, and then reiterating on that over and over again until we feel like, okay, there's people that some of our clients are just like, they see the design, they work for it. It's like, okay, here's my money, right? When is it ready? I want to sign up for it now, right? And so that's maybe where some of the marketing comes in, where you can simply put up a landing page with a design, with a demo of design, with not actually developing the actual product at all, and have a sign up page, right? And then generating those leads so that when you have the interest and potentially, like Kickstarter or whatnot, some people might already be putting some money down. You can use that to actually develop the product that people want without, building it first and then realizing no one wants it.
And how many? So you mentioned that you draw something and then you show it
Mm-hmm.
to people and you
Mm-hmm.
get the feedback and do another loop. And how many loops? Like, give me some examples. How many loops you usually do? How
I
many
mean,
times you go to people
yeah,
before you actually start building?
I think it's always important to, uh, even before you start designing, that you're you have people in mind that you're going to design and develop for, right? Hopefully it's not just you that has the problem, because if it's just you that has the problem and you're assuming other people have the problem, at the end of the day, maybe that it's just yourself that's going to buy the product, right? So hopefully before any of that stage, you've talked to many people that seem like, oh, I have the same problem you do. I'm curious what you're going to do. And so you kind of create this kind of research or focus group with them. And I would say, throughout the whole process, we do the wireframes first, then low fidelity mockups, then mid fidelity, then hi-fi, and then the hi-fi is what it hopefully will look like, and you click around and use it. But every part of the process, I would try to incorporate those potential users that are interested about the problem and the solution. Once
So
that's done, though.
sorry. So before you even start building, you go to the users 3 to 4 times.
Yeah, of
Low
course, yeah.
fidelity, medium,
As many
high.
stages, yeah, as many
Yeah.
stages as you can, get their feedback, because you don't. The idea here is that you don't want to go too far and then get feedback saying like, oh, that's not what I want at all, or that's not, I don't see how this is helpful for me, or what are you building here, right? So maybe even at the wireframe stage, where you start mocking out like, okay, this is, you're not looking at design at this place, you're just thinking about, okay, these are what the features will look like in the wireframe, right? And then gauge their reaction when they go through it. Then you might iterate on the wireframe a little bit to help you with the lo-fi, right? But that, I think for me, general concept here is that you never want to go spend too much time without talking to the people who may actually buy your product, because you don't want to be time finding out later they don't want it.
Okay, and so do you follow any you mentioned lean startup?
Mm-hmm.
So that's your methodology, or like, I don't know, design thinking or any other methods you're
Yeah,
using?
the lean startup and is something I do follow, even from when I was doing my MBA, and design thinking is something that I do really like. This whole concept of trying to emphasize and understand those users, and to an extent, we did this for Pickeret as well, where we would just go around like libraries and cafes and wherever we think people would be searching on Google for information. Like, there are, you can interview people, that's great, but some, people do get biased when they're sitting in a environment that they're being interviewed for, versus like you're watching them in their natural setting, searching. And so like, that's part of it for me, like that empathized stage of design thinking, where you really try to see what a user is doing. How do they research? Do they open multiple tabs? How are they saving the things that they have? Are they copying and pasting it into a Word document? Are they emailing the notes to themselves? What are they doing? And just watching them in that natural setting, and then try to see patterns in that. So, and understand like what are the different types of power users, based on their kind of descriptions of who they are. Right. So it's like understanding the user, then defining exactly where's the problem. And then the other kind of two steps with design thinking, where you ideate, you brainstorm and ideate like potential solutions, and then you just prototype them as quick and cheap as possible. And then once you just test it, and you just go through as many as you can until you find something that seems to work, and then iterate on that and make it better and better.
And you do this process also with your clients?
Yeah, we have all different types of clients, right? We have clients that have like, oh, we have a bug, please fix this bug, right? And that's not something we need to involve this whole process in. But for a lot of the startups that we work with, right, or new products that we work with, we don't tend to want to just jump into building the product as what they said, unless they've gone through extensive like research and understand the customer. But usually it may not be the case, and so it's like, it's we like to convey to the to the client as well here. It's good to go through these stages because if we just build something that they say that might cost 50 to 200 grand, and then later we build it all, well, that's fine with us, I guess. But then they have a product and they go try to market it at the end, and no one wants it. Then it was a waste of money, right? So we think of it as a spend a little bit, spend less money in the beginning on just like designing and researching and talking to customers, and then usually it's about a month and a half long process that we do with this as we're designing, and then hopefully that usually at that time the clients have a better understanding of what they really want, because in the beginning they have this huge vision, and then later on they're like, actually that could wait, this could wait, this is the core value that I want to do now, and this is what I want to test with now, and then that's what we build first, right? And then from there, if it works, then we start adding the new functions and new value that they have. But ideally you always incorporate the people that you're building for in mind, right? And not just building for yourself.
So, and when you're designing a new project or a new application, new website, you always follow the same pattern, or is like any differences, for example, for e-commerce or SaaS or other business types?
I think if you look at a high overview, the general steps are always the same. This whole kind of lean startup, emphasizing understanding, is pretty much the same. Obviously, different industries and different type of business strategies might, it's different on how we implement that, right? Some of it's not always a B2C, it might be B2B. We might not always have access to potential customers. And like you said, e-commerce for SaaS versus like a mobile app that they download, versus like one of the clients we have is building like an app for schools for them to manage their the meetings with students and their classes and stuff like that. And so it's a little different, right? In terms of who are we talking to, and maybe what exactly the focus is. And if with SaaS as well, it's you have to, I guess, think about not only the end user, but also like how are we how is this going to be a sustainable product as well. You have to think about not only your marketing, but also like your customer acquisition costs, your pricing strategy, all those things to make your SaaS business model work, right? So there's other things to think about depending on the type of product and the business.
And so, in your experiences, what are the, let's say, top 3 mistakes people are usually doing when they are trying to do a new project? What usually goes wrong?
Yeah. I think one is, and it's happened before in my previous startups and other startups I worked with, even at school. It's just, I think the first thing is people love their idea too much, right? Their initial idea too much, and they don't go and try to get constructive criticism, or not willing to change their product, right? I think there's a lot of companies out there that are really successful these days that didn't start the way they originally intended, right? And they were able to pivot. But so it's really hard, when you've thought about an idea so long that you really want to build it, and then you get some, you're talking to customers or potential users, like, that's not what I want. I want this. And a lot of times I would say entrepreneurs are so focused on their idea that they are not willing to pivot, and they believe the customers are wrong, and like they don't know what they're talking about. Once I build it, they'll come to me, kind of thing. And so that I think that's one of the biggest things. And one way to do that though is, again, this lean startup approach. Let's just build something cheap and small, and let's just validate, right? Let's just see if what your assumptions are true or not before spending too much money on it. Some other common, I guess, things that do happen. Scope creep is one that happens a lot currently in my position with helping different clients, is that they have an initial idea, and as we keep working on it, they suddenly get inspiration or motivation for, like, I want this, I want that, I want this, and they start losing track of their what their overall goal was, right? And so it's important to always kind of remind them that what is your original value that you're trying to give, and then if you're coming up with these other ideas, is it helping that, or is it detracting, or moving away from that original value and going somewhere else, right? And so sometimes they get excited, they lose track of kind of what what they really want to be working on.
So those two are completely opposite. The first one was that people they don't want to pivot because they are too stubborn in a way, and the second one is they don't have a focus, so they pivot all the time. Or
yeah, I think it's a little different. They pivot all the time, but based on their own. It could either be based on their own thinking suddenly, maybe they're taking a shower and it's like, oh my god, I had this idea, or it could be like, again, they talk to maybe one user, right? Maybe they talk to 100 people, but one person said, I want this, and they're like, oh, we gotta build that. But the thing is, we have to remember what is the goal that we want to do, and so that's why you do need to spend a lot of time thinking of what the purpose and the value is. And then once you feel very confident about that, almost like a North Star, that's what's guiding you throughout, right? At least until you're successful, then you can start thinking about other things to do. But it's there's just so much as an entrepreneur, even us as we're helping companies build their products. There's a lot of things going on, as you said, right? There's the design, development, the business development, the marketing, strategy, pricing, and talking to customers. That if you don't have a plan in place and a North Star in place, you're eventually going to lose your purpose and forget where you're going. So it's good to have that piece thought out thoroughly first.
And how do you, so when you are going through the project, how do you measure success? Like, I imagine, I mean, in my experience, like when you have and you're building a new app and it takes 3 to 5 or 6 months, how do you know when you are in the middle of the process that things are going in the right direction?
So the other interesting thing I would say is at Programination right now, I'm helping other people build their products. At Pickeret, I had a product that I was trying to get developers to build for me. So I was kind of in both sides of the lane here. In terms of, I would say one, as a project manager and a product manager kind of piece here, it's like what the most important thing is at least figuring out being organized and having going along with the time schedule they have, making sure there's no delays. That's like the one big piece for me. But in terms of like just making sure we feel like things are going successful overall for the product, is like even though we might be designing and developing for a client, the client should also be very busy at the same time, right? And as we are designing things, they have assets to use, either to talk to investors with. They have, as we're developing, we put stuff on staging for them to test. That's when they can already bring in, test users to start playing around and get it out. So they shouldn't be, they themselves should also be very busy trying to grow their product. And if we're working together well, then we know what we're developing is being validated by users, because the client is also showing those to investors and users, and they're like excited and looking forward to actually having the full platform and giving valuable feedback on what's working and what's not working, right? And so for me, that's it's not like spend 6 months and after 6 months then you get the feedback. It's throughout the whole process you're getting valuable feedback from the client and potential users that this is something that has value, so that when we get to the end, hopefully on time, because there's always things that happen, then we know what we created. There are people waiting at the end of the line that wants to pay for it and use it. And that's where, and you're not surprised, right? I don't want to be surprised by the fact that there are people waiting. I want to, throughout the whole process, like, as you know, there's one of a client that I have that already has people signed up to, like, they're, here he has a few people ready to use it. And after 1 month, it's going to be a couple hundred people. Like, that's something I'm excited to hear. And I won't be surprised once I finish. So my job is to make sure I just build the thing on time, exactly as the customers want it, right? So I think for me, that's how I measure success during that process.
So you're getting feedback from your client and from the clients of the client.
Correct. Or usually, clients of the clients tell the client what they're thinking. But there are times where we do get.
So in the process, while you are building the product, you are already including the potential users, the end users.
Correct. There is a client that we have right now where we're building. We have things on on beta and test flight before the finished product, where they're already incorporating patients to play around the product to get feedback on what works and what doesn't work, and that validates what we're doing, that we're actually building something that's useful, right? At the end of the day, we as a company don't want to just build things for money. We want to build things that actually have value for people, that's going to be out there, right? I'm sure most designers and developers, they don't want to build something that's going to be gone, in a couple months or in a year. They want to be like, oh, I built that and it's a big business now, right? And so we want to, we feel the same way, where we want to build something that has value. And so if during that process we're getting valuable feedback and we know we're going in the right direction, then we feel much better about what we're doing too.
And do you maybe have some stories, some examples when things went completely wrong? Like horror movie.
Yeah. I would. My horror movie is on the other side. I have one, horror story on the other side, as when I was working on Picker at hiring developers, and I'm sure maybe a lot of my clients feel the same, and I empathize with them. I know what it's like. When co-founders of a company have no development skills, right? But they're trying to build a tech product. Where do you go, right? Do you look for, do you try to look for a CTO? But then finding a CTO is a very big thing. It's almost like getting in, marrying someone, because you're splitting equity. You got to make business decisions together. Who knows how long you're going to stick together? That's hard, right? Making sure you find the right CTO. Then it's okay. If you don't find a CTO, then it's okay. Do we hire, local developers? And then how do we know if they're good enough to do that? And whatnot? And, do we outsource? We went through with that company, that startup, we went through maybe like 4 to 5, maybe more different developers, because each one didn't work out. They're too slow, or they didn't understand what we're trying to do, or they're too expensive. We interviewed like 30 of them and chose a few, and then ended up finding one that kind of worked for us. But there was one that was recommended to us by a friend who was a freelancer, and it seemed reasonable. He said he could do it on his own. He just needed I think he said he needed about 10 weeks to work on it. And every time we have these check-ins, in the beginning it seemed okay. He's like, I need 1 week to review, a second week to build the architecture diagram out, and how things are going to be laid out and work in databases. Great. And then as each week goes on, some other excuses come up. It's like, oh, I got really busy with this. Oh, I just moved. And by I think the 7th or 8th week, right? There's only 2 weeks left to finish what we wanted. That's supposed to take 10 weeks. The person was like, "Oh, no worries. If I, work every day, double the hours, I can get it done." And at one point, we're just saying it's impossible. In 2 weeks, it's just impossible to do what we want, and we have deadlines to hit. And so we unfortunately paid part of the starting fee of the product. It was like more than 10K, and we asked for that back because nothing was done, and he spent all that money already, and he couldn't give us back the money. So as a entrepreneur, as a startup that doesn't have a lot of resources, that's a lot of time and a lot of money wasted for us, right? 10,000 plus at that time to us felt like a lot, right? That could be used for many other things. And so, I'm in the US, it's just not worth taking someone to court in the US, because that costs time and money too. And so, that just ended, we just lost that money and lost that time and had to make up for it elsewhere. So that was on one side, the horror story. The other side, I think the other side is always when there's too many people working on a project together, right? If I and my team is in full control, then we have a better understanding. But when you have to work with different teams, there's just so much back and forth that things get delayed by so much that you can't anticipate it, and you have no control over it, right? Because there's other teams involved that you're not in charge of or supervising. So I over time, as I'm working on on this company, I try to put some buffer so that clients don't get clients are not unhappy that oh, you promised me you're going to get it done by this day and you didn't. But a lot of times there's just so many other factors involved. You just got to put in those buffer times so that they can plan accordingly. So those are, I'm sure there's plenty of other horror stories There's but those are just some that came to happen. Yeah.
Yeah, I always like to ask people to tell horror story because everyone is just saying how, success stories and what went right. But I think
Mm.
actually we learn a lot more from things when things are going wrong.
Yes, yeah, of course. I would say there is obviously we're still a startup. There was a time at our startup that we hit a very low point, right? We just had a lot of projects to do, but we weren't making enough money to kind of pay ourselves, and we're just staying up late all night. And I don't know if it's a problem or whatnot, but it's just, yeah, planning is very important. Figuring out a correct business model is very important when you're doing a startup, especially like ours. Um, and at the end of the day, we're still a business. I think sometimes we are a little too nice and try to help our clients without making any money. But we need to be around so that we can help them. But we did spend, again. I think for this company, my at the beginning of this company, we tried to grow the company by spending a lot of money on marketing, right? Google ads, Facebook ads, and then people would come to us saying like, "Oh, hey, like, let us help you, generate leads and whatnot." And at the end of the day, all that money spent and we got zero leads out of it. And so I think it's very important to either do your research to know exactly what you're doing and how you're spending that money, but also if you are trying to find a vendor to help you, do your homework as well, right?
Yeah, maybe also when you're hiring an agency, it's also a question, can you really afford an agency?
Exactly. Yeah.
Because, you are basically hiring people, but not that you are hiring them, but you're hiring someone else to kind of hire people for you. Because at
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
end, if you have an agency, two or five or a team will work on your behalf, and
Mhm.
they also have like, I don't know, 3 to 4 other clients probably they are working on. So
Exactly.
um, I mean, at the end, yes, they are an expert. I mean, we are an agency and we are an expert, but if you are a startup, I wouldn't advise to hire an agency, just being
Mhm.
brutally honest, because
Yeah.
it probably won't work.
Mhm.
It's too much things. So you don't, you know, in some cases it might work, but in general you still, like, maybe you do a pivot, maybe you don't have a proper product market fit and you have to change a lot, and
Yep.
it's not really fair to expect from an agency to do this for you. Usually when you are hiring an agency, you have to tell them uh, some objections, targeting,
Mhm.
and so on. So I think agency is cool when you want to scale or grow, but not when
Yeah.
you're a
Not
startup.
in the beginning. Yeah. Not the product market fit. Like
Yeah.
you have questions you need answered before you're able to sell yourself out there. Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
and
agree.
before you have to ask yourself. So you have to reach the point when you ask yourself, okay, it doesn't make sense for me to do this. I would rather hire someone. But at the
Mhm.
beginning, it makes sense for you to do it because you have to know how to
Yeah.
sell your product.
Exactly. Exactly. Yep. I agree.
Okay. Last question.
Sure.
What you will think? Uh, what do you think 2022 will bring to us? What will trend?
Oh. Um. I mean, it might be cliche, or many people have said this already, but I mean, our world is still very much affected by COVID, right? And how COVID has pushed us into you know, uh, people into using more technology, adopting new technologies, and maybe staying at home. So I think there's going to be a lot of things that are in the future related to that, in terms of being more digital, whether it's telehealth, being able to check your health while on the phone or something without having to go into the hospital. But also working from home and the technologies that revolve working from home, going to school from home, right? I think people are starting to question, do I need to go there, right? Or can certain things be done, within the comforts of where I want to be, and within my lifestyle, right? I think people are realizing that they can live the life they want, or travel or whatever, and still do the things that they need to do. I think that's there. I don't know too much about it, but I mean it's in the news all the time. Crypto and you know cryptocurrencies and blockchain technology. We'll see how that might change how things are going in the future in terms of that area. But I think in terms of just in terms of the work that we're getting more and more work in relation to like health, and wellness kind of things. And I think people are starting to. It might be because of COVID, they're starting to worry about themselves and their health, and maybe they're staying at home, so they're not getting enough exercise, or they're not getting their, people, friends around them or loved ones around them. They're by themselves, and I think there's more and more of these products that will come out that has to do with making sure you yourself are healthy mentally and physically, and we'll see how what kind of things will come out there in that sense.
Cool. Yeah. not I'm not too happy to have more COVID, but I guess one year of COVID ahead of us.
Yeah, we'll see. Hopefully we got it under wraps. I'm a little tired of working from home, and I want to be out and about, kind of.
So at the moment, Programination, you're working from home completely, or do you have some kind of hybrid, partly from home, partly in the office?
Yeah, we're hybrid. Our whole team is remote. From the conception of the or inception of the business, everyone's been remote. But we have a co-working space. So we have an actual office, but that office is a co-working space that allows us to go to other branches of that co-working space. So it provides the flexibility. Sometimes we, kind of before COVID, we used to travel to our clients. Also because I'm located in a different place than my co-founder, we have to go to different offices sometimes to do our work. So we are very much remote, flexible kind of work culture at our place. Good and bad. Obviously, as you know, I work late nights as well. So it's a startup, right? It's not a 9 to 5 company, right? It's whatever needs to be done, whatever.
Yeah, maybe that's a trend. 9 to 5 companies are disappearing. Even people who are working in the 9 to 5 companies, they say that they don't work 9 to 5. They work all over the place.
Exactly. But again, if that what works for them, I think that's important, right? You don't have to follow the traditional schedule. As long as you get the work done and as long as you're happy, that's fine.
Well, you mentioned before that mental health issues are on the rise. So
Yeah, I think yeah, being trapped at home with COVID and everything, all the things that are going around the world,
yeah, and working all the time.
and working all the time. Yep. So hopefully
Okay.
things will get better.
Elvis, I really appreciate you joined us. I think you
Hmm.
shared a lot of useful tips here, a lot of insights our listeners can use in their day-to-day life. I wish you all the best, and I hope we will do this again next year.
All right. Thanks, Francie. Have a good one, everyone. Bye.
Bye.